The first call came in at 11:48 p.m. Dispatch logged it as a domestic disturbance, screaming, objects breaking, routine almost. Then the second call, 11:53 p.m., different neighbor. This time the word was gunshot. That changed everything. Officer Miller was first on scene, pulling up to the neat suburban house on Elmwood Avenue. Lights off, but siren winding down. The front door was slightly ajar. He drew his weapon. Standard procedure. But nothing felt standard. Through the gap, he saw overturned furniture, a shattered lamp. Then he saw him. David Miller, no relation, kneeling on the floor, hands soaked in something dark, rocking back and forth, making a sound that wasn't crying, wasn't screaming, just raw animal grief. Beside him, sprawled unnaturally, was Sarah Jenkins, David's younger sister. Her eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling. A single dark bloom stained the front of her blouse. And standing by the fireplace, eerily calm, was Anna Miller, David's wife. She held a small, pearl-handled revolver loosely at her side. Her face was a mask. Miller barked commands. Anna dropped the gun. It clattered on the hearth. David didn't look up, just kept rocking, kept making that sound. Backup arrived. Sirens now screaming, neighbors peering from behind curtains. The scene was secured. Paramedics confirmed Sarah was dead. Anna was cuffed, read her rights, placed in a cruiser. She said nothing. David was gently helped up, led outside, wrapped in a blanket. He was shivering violently despite the mild night. Detective Harding arrived, surveyed the scene. Blood spatter analysis would come later. Forensics dusting for prints. The usual grim ballet. But Harding felt a prickle of something else. The way David looked at Anna as she was driven away. Not hatred, not fear. Something else. Resignation, confusion. 20 years. They'd been married 20 years. Neighbors described them as quiet, maybe a little odd. Anna was beautiful, kept to herself mostly. David worked IT downtown, steady job. Sarah visited often, lived just across town. Tonight she wasn't visiting. Tonight she died here. In the ambulance, David finally spoke, his voice hoarse, broken. She didn't mean it, he whispered to the paramedic. She didn't understand. Understand what? The paramedic didn't ask. It wasn't his job. Harding overheard it, though. Understand what? What secret festered beneath the surface of this quiet suburban life, exploding into violence tonight? Later, at the station, under the harsh fluorescent lights, David stared at the coffee Harding offered. He wouldn't drink it. He just stared. You need to tell me what happened, David. Harding kept his voice low, calm. David shook his head slowly. You wouldn't believe me. Harding had heard that before, usually followed by something unbelievable. Try me. David took a shuddering breath. His eyes met Harding's, filled with a pain that seemed older than the night's events. Anna. Anna wasn't born, Anna. The statement hung in the air. Harding waited. David continued, the words tumbling out now, a dam breaking. I found out right after we got married 20 years ago she was born male. Harding kept his face neutral, processed the information. Transgender woman. Okay. Tragic, but how did it lead to murder? And your sister? Sarah? David's face crumpled. Sarah found out. Recently, she couldn't accept it. Tonight she confronted Anna, called her names, threatened to tell everyone, our work, our friends, everything. He buried his face in his hands. Anna just snapped. She always had that temper, but this, Sarah kept pushing. The confession poured out, piece by agonizing piece. A 20-year secret, a confrontation, a fatal snap. But Harding sensed more. David's tone wasn't just grief. It was guilt, deep, pervasive guilt. Why stay for 20 years with a secret that clearly caused such strain? Why protect Anna now? What wasn't he saying? The initial shockwave of the murder was just the beginning. The real story, Harding suspected, was buried under 2 decades of silence and complicity. The call log showed Sarah had called David minutes before the shooting. Voicemail, 11:41 p.m. David, pick up. You need to get over here. She's lost it. I told you this would happen. She's waving that damn antique gun around your father gave you. David. Then, muffled shouting. A crash. The line went dead. David hadn't been kneeling beside his sister when the first officers arrived just because he found her. He'd been there. He'd seen it, or heard it. The quiet suburban street was now a crime scene, flashing lights painting the trees red and blue, a stark contrast to the curated flower beds. Neighbors gathered, whispering. "Always thought they were strange," murmured Mrs. Gable from next door, clutching her robe. Anna, she never really fit in. Beautiful woman, but distant. Another neighbor, Mark Chen, shook his head. David seemed okay, normal guy, worked hard, but tense. Always looked tense. The whispers formed a narrative, the kind that solidifies quickly in the face of tragedy. The strange wife, the normal husband, the visiting sister. It was simple, too simple. Inside the house, forensic techs carefully bagged the pearl-handled revolver. It was an antique .22 caliber, David's father's gun, kept in a display case. Why was it out tonight? Why was it loaded? In the interrogation room, David's initial confession seemed straightforward, almost rehearsed. Sarah found out Anna was transgender. Sarah confronted Anna. Anna shot Sarah. But the details felt porous. Harding pressed him. "David, why did you stay? 20 years is a long time to keep a secret like that." David flinched. "I loved her." The answer was immediate, reflexive, but his eyes darted away. It wasn't easy at first, finding out, but we made it work. We built a life. He spoke of the early days, the shock of the discovery. Anna, then presenting as she always had since he'd known her, confessed tearfully weeks after their Las Vegas elopement. She'd been terrified, certain he would leave. He described his confusion, his anger, the betrayal. But then he talked about her vulnerability, her fear of the world's judgment, her desperation to live authentically, even if it began with a lie. She never had surgery, David admitted quietly. Couldn't afford it back then and later. She just didn't. It wasn't important to her, she said. Being seen as Anna was enough. He claimed he'd stayed out of love, out of a sense of protection. He painted Anna as fragile, misunderstood. Sarah never liked her, he added, a flicker of resentment crossing his face. Even before, she always thought Anna was off, too quiet, too secretive. According to David, Sarah's discovery wasn't sudden. It was a slow burn. Suspicious remarks Anna made, inconsistencies David tried to cover up, maybe something Sarah overheard or found. Tonight was just the boiling point, David insisted. Sarah came over, already angry about something else. Money, I think. We've been having financial problems. Then she started in on Anna, about the secret. Said she'd found proof, something online maybe? Threatened to expose her. He described the argument escalating, voices rising, Sarah shouting slurs, Anna retreating, then suddenly grabbing the gun from the unlocked display case. David claimed he tried to intervene, but it happened too fast. A flash, a bang, Sarah falling, Anna standing there, shocked. A plausible narrative, a tragedy born of secrets and prejudice. Yet something still felt off. David's focus was entirely on Anna's state of mind, Sarah's provocation. His own role seemed minimized, passive, a witness, a grieving husband and brother. But the voicemail from Sarah painted a different picture. "She's waving that damn antique gun around your father gave you." Not just a gun, his gun. And Sarah had called him for help. Harding pulled the preliminary forensics report. Gunpowder residue tests on David's hands were inconclusive due to the blood contamination, but trace amounts were detected on his shirt sleeve. Consistent with being nearby, perhaps struggling for the weapon, or consistent with firing it himself. The thought was jarring, unwelcome, but Harding couldn't dismiss it. David's story placed him as a helpless bystander. The evidence hinted at something potentially more active. "David," Harding leaned forward slightly. "When Sarah called you, screaming for help, where were you?" David hesitated. I was on my way home from work. Late project. Your office confirmed you clocked out at 5:02 p.m. A long silence. David's eyes flickered towards the two-way mirror. He knew he was being watched. "I went for a drive to clear my head. Things were tense at home." "Where did you drive?" "Just around." Vague, evasive. Harding changed tack. "This financial trouble. How bad was it?" David swallowed. "Pretty bad. Credit cards maxed out. We were looking at maybe losing the house." "Did Sarah know?" "She suspected. She'd lent us money before. Was angry we needed more." "Did she blame Anna?" A nod. Barely perceptible. She always thought Anna was careless with money, irresponsible. A new angle emerged. Money, secrets, resentment, a volatile mix. Was the confrontation really about Anna's identity, or was that just the spark that ignited a deeper, more complex conflict? Was David protecting Anna out of love, or was he protecting himself? The narrative David presented was crumbling at the edges. The portrait of a quiet suburban tragedy was becoming darker, more complex, tangled in lies that stretched back 2 decades, 20 years earlier. David Miller wasn't the tense, haunted man sitting in an interrogation room. He was 25, fresh out of college, working his first serious IT job, full of awkward charm and cautious optimism. He met Anna at a downtown gallery opening. She was stunning, tall, elegant, with eyes that seemed to hold a universe of secrets. He was instantly smitten. She seemed reserved, almost shy, but warm to his earnest attention. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Dinners, walks in the park, late-night talks. Anna spoke vaguely about her past, a difficult family she'd left behind, a desire for a fresh start. David, eager and perhaps willfully naive, didn't press. He was in love with the woman before him. They eloped to Vegas 3 months later. It felt impulsive, romantic, perfect. The cracks appeared almost immediately after they returned. Settling into a small apartment, the practicalities of merging lives began. Anna was evasive about paperwork, official documents, minor things at first. A missing birth certificate for a joint bank account, hesitation over applying for a passport for a planned honeymoon. David, puzzled, confronted her. The confession came during a tearful, late-night argument. Anna, whose legal name was still Andrew Carter, told him everything. Born male, felt female since childhood, estranged from a family who rejected her, living as Anna since her late teens. She hadn't had surgery, hadn't legally changed her name or gender marker yet. She'd been terrified of telling him, terrified of losing him. David's world tilted. Betrayal warred with the genuine affection he felt. He remembered feeling sick, confused, angry. He almost walked out. He spent a night driving around, his mind racing. Who was this person he married? Was any of it real? But then he thought of Anna's vulnerability, the fear in her eyes. He thought of the connection they shared. Was her assigned sex at birth more important than the person he loved? Society's judgment felt heavy even then. This was years before mainstream conversations about transgender lives were common. The risks felt enormous. Exposure, ridicule, losing his job, estranging his own family, especially Sarah. Sarah, his younger sister, fiercely protective, deeply conventional. He knew she would never understand, never accept Anna. So he made a choice, a monumental, life-altering choice. He would stay. They would keep it a secret, their secret. For Anna's safety, he told himself, for their love, but maybe also for his own fear of disruption, of judgment. The early years were fraught with tension, learning to navigate the world with this hidden truth, avoiding situations that might require identification, carefully curating their social circle. Anna legally changed her name, but not her gender marker. A complex, expensive process she seemed reluctant to pursue. David handled most official matters. He became the gatekeeper of their secret reality. He told his family Anna was an orphan, estranged from distant relatives. Sarah was suspicious from the start. She found Anna aloof, evasive. "There's something she's not telling us, David," she'd warned him early on. "Be careful." David brushed off her concerns, creating distance between his wife and his sister, hoping to insulate their fragile world. They bought the house on Elmwood, seeking suburban anonymity. David's career progressed. They settled into a routine. From the outside, they looked normal. But the secret was a constant low-grade hum beneath the surface. It affected intimacy, created unspoken barriers. Anna grew more withdrawn over the years, prone to bouts of deep depression and sudden flashes of temper, especially when she felt scrutinized or threatened. David became adept at smoothing things over, making excuses, managing Anna's moods and the world's perception. He felt less like a husband, more like a caretaker, a secret keeper. Their finances became strained. Anna struggled to hold down jobs, citing anxiety or workplace misunderstandings. David took on extra work, but they fell behind. Credit card debt mounted. They refinanced the house. The pressure intensified the cracks in their relationship. Arguments became more frequent, circling around money, Anna's reclusiveness, David's exhaustion, but the core secret remained untouched, the elephant in every room. Sarah, meanwhile, never stopped probing. Her relationship with David grew strained. She saw him as stressed, unhappy, trapped. She blamed Anna, sensing a hidden dysfunction but never guessing its true nature. She'd drop comments, ask pointed questions, watch Anna with undisguised suspicion. David deflected, withdrew, further isolating himself. He was caught between his sister's persistent concern and his wife's volatile secrecy. Then came the incident about 6 months before the murder. A background check for a volunteer position Anna wanted flagged the discrepancy in her records. It didn't explicitly state her history, but it raised questions they couldn't easily answer. Anna panicked. David managed to smooth it over, but the close call shook them both. It also seemed to intensify Sarah's suspicions. She started asking David more direct questions about Anna's past, about identity documents, about why Anna never visited doctors David recommended. She mentioned finding online forums discussing people who lived under different identities. The net felt like it was closing in. David found himself trapped in a web of his own making. 20 years of lies, accommodations, and fear had led them here. He loved Anna, or at least he loved the idea of the life he'd tried to build with her. But he was drowning. The secret wasn't just protecting Anna anymore. It was consuming him. He felt responsible for her, yet suffocated by her. The decision he made 20 years ago, fueled by a mix of love, fear, and perhaps a misguided sense of heroism, had curdled into a desperate, exhausting reality. He hadn't just stayed with Anna. He had built the cage that now held them both captive. And Sarah, his own sister, was rattling the bars. The financial pressure cooker was reaching critical mass in the months leading up to Sarah's death. David's salary, once comfortable, was being eaten alive by debt. Minimum payments barely touched the principal. Collection agencies started calling. Anna's inability to maintain steady employment became a major point of contention. "It's not my fault people are idiots," Anna would snap during arguments about job hunting. "They look at me funny. They ask invasive questions." Her defensiveness often masked a deeper fragility, but David, exhausted and stressed, found his sympathy wearing thin. "We're going to lose the house, Anna. Do you understand? Lose the house." He remembered shouting this during one particularly bitter fight, maybe 3 weeks before the end. Anna had retreated, locking herself in the bedroom, leaving David alone with the ringing phone and the pile of overdue bills. Sarah knew things were bad. She'd bailed them out twice before. Small amounts, relatively speaking, but significant enough to strain her own budget as a single school teacher. This time, David hinted they needed more. A lot more. Sarah had refused. "I can't keep doing this, David." Her voice on the phone was tight with frustration. "It's like throwing money into a black hole. What is she doing with it? Does she even try to work?" David had defended Anna reflexively. "It's complicated, Sarah. She's sensitive." "Sensitive? Or hiding something?" Sarah shot back. The question hung in the air. Sarah didn't know the big secret, not yet, but her intuition was screaming. She saw the evasiveness, the unexplained expenses, Anna's almost paranoid need for privacy. She started digging. Not maliciously at first, more out of concern for David. She started with public records, old social media profiles under names Anna might have used, genealogy sites, standard online sleuthing. Most leads went nowhere. Anna was adept at covering her tracks, and David had helped build the wall. But Sarah was persistent. She found inconsistencies in stories Anna had told about her non-existent family, references to places Anna claimed never to have been. Small things, but they added up. Around 2 weeks before the murder, Sarah found something more concrete. An old news clipping, digitized, from a small town hundreds of miles away, mentioning an Andrew Carter involved in a minor shoplifting incident years ago. The age matched. The description was vague, but something about it clicked for Sarah. Andrew Carter. Where had she heard that name? Had David mentioned it dismissively once? Was it on a piece of junk mail? She couldn't place it, but the name stuck. She confronted David. "Who is Andrew Carter, David?" He'd gone pale. "Never heard of him." "Why? Are you sure?" "Because I found something weird online about Anna." David became angry, defensive. "Stop digging, Sarah. Leave her alone. You've never liked her." The intensity of his reaction confirmed Sarah's suspicions. He was hiding something, something big. This wasn't just about money anymore. The final piece clicked into place, according to David's later tearful account to Harding, just days before the shooting. Sarah, possibly through more targeted searches using the name Andrew Carter, or perhaps by finding a stray piece of old mail, or even accessing David's computer, found definitive proof. Maybe an old driver's license application, a forum post Anna made under her old name, something linking Andrew Carter directly to Anna Miller. The exact method remained unclear, obscured by David's grief and potential obfuscation, but the result was explosive. Sarah now knew. She knew Anna Miller was assigned male at birth. The revelation, combined with years of suspicion, financial frustration, and concern for her brother, ignited a fury in her. It wasn't just the transgender aspect David insisted to Harding. It was the lie, the 20 years of deception, the feeling that Anna had manipulated David, trapped him, ruined him financially. Sarah felt vindicated in her dislike, her mistrust now seemingly justified. She called David, demanding he leave Anna immediately. "She's a liar, a freak. How could you stay with that all these years? No wonder you're broke. Get out now, David, or I swear I'll tell everyone. Your boss, your friends, everyone online." David pleaded with her. "Sarah, please, don't do this. It's complicated. We can talk about it." "There's nothing to talk about. It's disgusting. I'm coming over there. We're getting your stuff." David knew Anna had overheard his side of the frantic phone call. He saw the look on her face. Fear, rage, desperation. He tried to calm Anna down, tried to intercept Sarah. But Sarah was already on her way, fueled by righteous anger. The stage was set. The financial desperation, the discovered secret, Sarah's ultimatum, Anna's volatility, and David, caught in the middle, paralyzed by 2 decades of compromised choices. When Sarah arrived at the house that night, it wasn't just a confrontation. It was the detonation of a bomb that had been ticking for 20 years. The scene inside the house, as pieced together from David's fragmented statements and the forensic evidence, was chaotic and brutal. Sarah didn't knock. She used the key David had given her years ago, storming in like avenging fury. "Where is she?" Sarah's voice, tight with rage, echoed in the small living room. David, who had just gotten home moments before, tried to block her path. "Sarah, calm down. We need to talk about this rationally." Anna emerged from the kitchen doorway, her face pale, her eyes blazing. "Get out of my house," she hissed. "Your house?" Sarah laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "This house bought with my brother's money. Money you probably tricked him out of, you man." The slur hung in the air, venomous. According to David, that's when Anna completely lost control. Years of suppressed fear, shame, and resentment erupted. She screamed back, incoherent words, accusations. David tried to step between them, pleading, "Stop it, both of you." But they were locked in combat, ignoring him. Sarah advanced on Anna. "Everyone's going to know, Andrew, what you are, what you did to my brother." Anna backed away towards the fireplace, her eyes darting around frantically. She saw the display case. David claimed he usually kept it locked, but they'd had guests a week prior, and he'd shown his father's antique gun collection. He hadn't locked it back up, a fatal oversight. Anna fumbled with the latch, her hands shaking. She grabbed the small, pearl-handled .22 revolver. "Get away from me!" she shrieked, waving the gun erratically. This aligns with Sarah's desperate voicemail to David. "She's waving that damn antique gun around! David!" Sarah, perhaps emboldened by anger or disbelief that Anna would actually use it, didn't back down. "Put that down, you freak! You wouldn't dare!" David lunged, trying to grab the gun from Anna's hand. "Anna, no, give it to me." They struggled. Sarah yelled at David, "Get it away from her." For a moment, David had his hand on the weapon. This could explain the trace residue on his shirt. Then, in the chaotic scuffle, Anna regained control, or perhaps David lost his grip. The sequence became blurred in his account. He insisted Anna pulled the trigger. Forensics suggested the shot was fired at close range, slightly upward angle, consistent with Sarah perhaps leaning forward aggressively and Anna holding the gun lower, possibly struggling with David simultaneously. The bullet struck Sarah high in the chest. The sound, David recalled, wasn't as loud as he expected, more like a sharp crack. Sarah staggered back, a look of utter shock on her face. Her hand went to her chest. She looked at David, her eyes wide with confusion, perhaps betrayal. Then she collapsed. Silence descended, thick and suffocating, broken only by Anna's ragged breathing and the gurgling sound starting in Sarah's throat. David stared, frozen. The gun clattered from Anna's suddenly limp hand onto the hearth. Time seemed to stop. Then, the primal sound tore from David's throat as he rushed to his sister, kneeling beside her, pressing his hands uselessly against the wound. Anna just stood there by the fireplace, watching him, her expression unreadable. Was it shock, remorse, or something else? David frantically called 911, his voice cracking, incoherent. He dropped the phone as he heard the sirens approaching. He looked up at Anna. "What did you do?" he whispered, the accusation finally surfacing. Anna didn't answer. She just looked down at Sarah, then back at David, her expression hardening into that eerie calm the first officer witnessed. When the police arrived, David was still kneeling, rocking, lost in a grief so profound it seemed to swallow the horrific reality. Anna remained still, a statue beside the hearth, the discharged weapon near her feet. David's initial statement to Harding, that Sarah provoked Anna snapped. He tried to intervene but was too late, largely matched this reconstruction, but crucial details remained ambiguous. The struggle for the gun, David's exact position, the moment of firing. Could David, in the struggle, have accidentally caused the discharge? Or more chillingly, could he have intentionally, reflexively, tried to wrest the gun away and in doing so, aimed it inadvertently or even purposefully toward his sister in the melee? Harding considered the gunpowder residue, the angle, David's evasiveness about his arrival time, Sarah's desperate call implicitly blaming Anna but seeking David's intervention. David's narrative positioned him as a tragic figure caught between two warring women. But was his role purely passive? His complicity wasn't just in keeping the secret for 20 years. It might have extended to the final, fatal moments. The weight of that possibility settled heavily in the interrogation room. David Miller wasn't just a grieving husband and brother. He was the central figure in a tragedy he had spent 2 decades setting the stage for. His actions and inactions had led directly to this room, this night, this unbearable loss. The media descended like vultures on carrion. Husband's 20-year secret, wife was a man, sister murdered in shocking confrontation. The headlines screamed variations of the same lurid theme. The transgender element became the central focus, overshadowing the complex dynamics of debt, desperation, and long-simmering family conflict. Anna Miller was instantly painted as a monstrous deceiver, David as the duped, tragic husband, Sarah as the innocent victim who discovered the awful truth. Cable news talking heads debated gender identity, deception in relationships, and the warning signs everyone apparently missed. Online forums exploded with transphobic rhetoric and armchair psychoanalysis. The quiet suburban street became a macabre tourist stop. Neighbors gave interviews, their earlier whispers now amplified, often distorted. Mrs. Gable's distant became cold and calculating. Mark Chen's tense became visibly terrified of his wife. Reality warped under the media spotlight. Inside the investigation, Harding felt the pressure mounting. The DA wanted a clean case. Anna Miller, the transgender woman who killed her sister-in-law after her secret was exposed. It fit a narrative, however biased. Anna, held without bail, remained largely silent. Her court-appointed lawyer advised her not to speak to anyone. In brief preliminary hearings, she appeared shell-shocked, detached. Her lawyer signaled a potential defense strategy: extreme emotional disturbance, possibly self-defense, arguing Sarah's aggressive confrontation and transphobic slurs constituted provocation. David, released after his initial questioning but clearly still under suspicion, retreated into himself. He stayed with friends, avoiding the house, avoiding the press. He hired his own lawyer. The conflict of interest was obvious. He was the state's primary witness against his wife, yet his own actions, his 20 years of secrecy, and his presence during the crime were under scrutiny. His loyalty, already strained to the breaking point, was now legally and emotionally fractured. Whose side was he truly on? His wife's? His murdered sister's? Or simply his own? Harding brought David back in for further questioning. The atmosphere was different now. Less sympathy, more directness. David, we need to talk about the struggle for the gun again. Forensics suggests it was very close quarters. Your hand was likely on the weapon at some point. David looked exhausted, thinner. The adrenaline had worn off, replaced by a crushing weight. I told you. I tried to stop her. I tried to get the gun away. Is it possible, in the struggle, that your finger slipped onto the trigger? Harding asked quietly. David recoiled. No, I didn't shoot her. Anna shot her. Is it possible you inadvertently redirected the gun towards Sarah while trying to pull it away from Anna? Another denial, vehement. No, Sarah came at her. Anna panicked. It was Anna. But his eyes wouldn't meet Harding's. He kept looking down at his hands, flexing his fingers as if remembering the feel of the struggle. Harding presented the phone records. Sarah's call to David. She called you for help, David. She sounded terrified of Anna. Why didn't you call 911 then? Why drive over there yourself? I thought I could handle it, calm them down. I never thought, his voice trailed off. Never thought what? That Anna would actually use the gun? Or that Sarah would push so hard? David didn't answer. Harding pressed on the finances. How much debt were you really in, David? Was Sarah threatening to expose that too? Maybe report you for fraud if Anna was involved in running up debts under false pretenses. David shook his head. No, it wasn't like that. It was just bad management, stress. But the mention of fraud seemed to strike a nerve. Had Anna used her pre-transition identity, Andrew Carter, for financial dealings? Had David facilitated it? Another layer of potential deception. The investigation started looking into their financial records more deeply. Credit card applications, loan documents. Were there irregularities linked to Anna's dual identity? Was the 20-year secret not just about gender, but also about covering up potential financial crimes? Sarah's motivation might have been more complex than just transphobia or anger over the lie. Perhaps she'd stumbled onto evidence of fraud and threatened to expose that, using the gender secret as ammunition. This shifted the dynamic considerably. Anna's motive might not have been solely a reaction to being outed, but a desperate act to prevent financial ruin and potential criminal charges. And David, his complicity deepened. Keeping the secret wasn't just protecting Anna's identity. It might have been crucial to maintaining a precarious financial house of cards built on deception. His frantic effort to stop the confrontation wasn't just about preventing violence. It might have been about preventing exposure of everything. The media narrative focused solely on the sensational gender angle, was missing the grimy, desperate truth festering beneath. This wasn't just a tragic clash over identity. It was potentially a volatile intersection of secrets, lies, gender, fear, and financial crime, culminating in murder. David Miller was no longer just a victim or a witness. He was potentially an accomplice, not to the murder itself, but to the decades of deception that made it almost inevitable. The pretrial discovery phase unearthed a tangle of financial irregularities. It wasn't large-scale, sophisticated fraud, but a messy pattern of desperation. Credit cards opened using subtle variations of names or slightly altered social security numbers. Perhaps mistakes, perhaps intentional attempts linked to Anna's pre-transition identity that were never fully rectified. Small loans obtained with incomplete information. David, as the primary earner and manager of their finances, had signed off on many documents, co-signed applications. His defense: he was overwhelmed, didn't scrutinize the details, trusted Anna. But the prosecution hinted he knew more, that he was willfully blind or worse, actively participated to keep their heads above water. Sarah, it turned out, had indeed found discrepancies. Notes found in her apartment, scribbled on bank statement copies, questioned specific transactions, highlighted inconsistencies in addresses linked to Anna. Her final confrontation wasn't just fueled by the shock of Anna's gender history. It was armed with evidence of financial deception. She hadn't just threatened to out Anna as transgender, she'd threatened to report them for fraud. This revelation shifted the perceived motive significantly. Anna's panic wasn't just existential, it was practical, immediate. Exposure meant potential jail time, financial ruin, the complete collapse of the life David had painstakingly, if dishonestly, helped her maintain. David found himself in an impossible position. The prosecution needed his testimony against Anna. He was the only witness to the shooting itself, but testifying meant fully exposing the 20 years of lies, including the financial aspects that now implicated him. His lawyer negotiated frantically. A deal was floated. testify truthfully against Anna, and the DA might overlook potential charges related to the financial irregularities. It was a devil's bargain, damning his wife to save himself, or remain silent, obstruct, and risk being charged alongside her if not for the murder, then for conspiracy or fraud. His internal conflict was palpable. In interviews conducted for a planned documentary on the case, David appeared tormented. "People see the headlines," he said, his voice raspy, filmed in silhouette to protect his location. "They think it's simple. This crazy trans woman, this poor deceived husband. It wasn't like that. It was life. Messy. Complicated. We made choices. Bad choices, maybe. But we were trying to survive." He spoke of love still, but it was tinged with exhaustion and resentment. "Did I enable her? Yes. Did I cover things up? Yes. Because I thought I was protecting her. Protecting us. Our life. What we built. What had they built? A house of cards on a foundation of secrets." Harding watched these interviews feeling a grim confirmation of his initial instincts. David wasn't evil, perhaps, but his weakness, his fear of confrontation, his desperate need to maintain a facade of normalcy, had created the environment where tragedy could flourish. He chose the secret 20 years ago, and every day since, he chose it again, reinforcing the walls of their prison. Anna's defense team, meanwhile, leaned heavily into the narrative of Sarah as the aggressor, emphasizing the transphobic slurs, painting Anna as a victim pushed beyond her breaking point. They highlighted Anna's documented history of anxiety and depression, suggesting diminished capacity. They argued Sarah's threats, both personal and financial, created a kill or be killed scenario in Anna's panicked mind. Self-defense against imminent harm, both physical and the complete destruction of her life. The pearl-handled revolver became a focal point. The defense argued Anna grabbed it impulsively, defensively. The prosecution argued she retrieved it intentionally, perhaps even earlier in the argument than David admitted. David's inconsistent statements about when exactly Anna got the gun became crucial. The trial date approached. The media frenzy reignited. Would David testify against Anna? What really happened in those frantic moments? Was it a provoked snap? A calculated silencing? An accidental tragedy born of struggle? The simple narrative of the headlines dissolved, replaced by a murky reality where victimhood and culpability blurred. David Miller had to make his final choice: testify and betray the woman he'd spent 20 years protecting, implicating himself in their shared deceit but potentially securing his freedom, or protect her one last time, risking everything. His decision would be the final act in a tragedy he had authored, unknowingly, 20 years before. The courtroom buzzed, a low hum of anticipation. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but sketch artists furiously captured the tension. Anna Miller sat beside her lawyer, looking diminished, pale but composed. David Miller sat across the aisle with the prosecution team, his face etched with sleeplessness and dread. He had taken the deal. His testimony was the linchpin of the state's case. When David took the stand, a hush fell over the room. The prosecutor led him through the events, starting with the discovery of the secret 20 years ago, the decision to stay, the mounting financial pressures, Sarah's growing suspicions, the final fatal confrontation. David's voice was low, often cracking. He recounted Sarah's angry words, the slurs. He described Anna's panic, her grabbing the gun. He detailed the struggle. "I tried to get it from her," he repeated, his gaze fixed on the wooden rail of the witness box. "She was flailing. Sarah was yelling, then it just went off." The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal. "Mr. Miller, you stayed with Anna for 20 years after discovering her secret, correct?" "Yes." "You helped her maintain this secret? Lied to your family, your friends, employers?" "Yes." "You benefited from this secrecy, didn't you? It allowed you to maintain a normal life, avoid difficult questions?" David shifted uncomfortably. "I stayed because I loved her." "Did you love her when the bills piled up? When collection agencies called? When she couldn't hold a job?" The questions hammered down, painting David not as a loving husband, but as a co-conspirator in deception, driven by convenience and fear. The lawyer zeroed in on the financial irregularities. "Isn't it true, Mr. Miller, that Sarah wasn't just angry about Anna's identity, but that she had uncovered evidence of potential fraud? That she threatened to go to the police?" David hesitated. She said things. About money, she was angry. Did she threaten to expose you both? Yes. And isn't it true that Anna grabbing the gun wasn't just about being called names, but about silencing the person who could send you both to prison? Objection. The prosecutor jumped up. Sustained. Counsel is speculating. But the damage was done. Doubt had been cast on Anna's sole motive, and implicitly, on David's role. The defense lawyer then focused on the struggle. You admit your hand was on the gun, Mr. Miller? Yes, I was trying to get it away. Your sister was lunging forward, yelling. Yes. Anna was panicked, backing up? Yes. Isn't it possible, Mr. Miller, in that chaotic moment, grappling for the weapon, you inadvertently caused it to discharge? That your actions led to your sister's death? David's face went white. No, that's not what happened. But it's possible, isn't it, in the chaos? You can't be 100% certain, can you? David stared at the lawyer. Then his eyes flickered towards Anna. She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. He looked lost, tormented. I don't know, he whispered, the admission hanging heavy in the silent courtroom. It was a crack in his certainty, a seed of reasonable doubt. Anna did not testify. Her defense rested on the cross-examination of David, forensic evidence highlighting the close-quarters struggle, and testimony about her mental state and Sarah's aggressive behavior. The closing arguments presented two starkly different narratives. The prosecution, Anna Miller, a manipulator living a lie, silenced her sister-in-law to protect her secrets, both personal and financial, aided by her husband's decades of complicity. The defense, Anna Miller, a vulnerable woman pushed to the brink by relentless persecution and threats, acted in a state of extreme emotional distress or even self-defense during a chaotic struggle tragically initiated by the victim. David Miller, they argued, bore significant moral, if not legal responsibility for the outcome. The jury deliberated for 3 days. The tension was unbearable. David waited at his lawyer's office, unable to eat or sleep. He was legally free, his deal holding, but emotionally he was imprisoned. Finally, the verdict came. Guilty, not of first-degree murder, but of second-degree murder. The jury found malice, an intent to cause serious harm, but not premeditation. They acknowledged the provocation and emotional distress, but didn't find it sufficient to excuse the killing entirely. Anna showed little reaction as the verdict was read. A slight tightening of her jaw, perhaps. David wasn't in the courtroom. His lawyer informed him. News reports described him breaking down upon hearing the verdict. Relief? Guilt? Grief? Probably all three. Anna was sentenced to 15 years to life, with eligibility for parole after 12. The judge acknowledged the complex circumstances, but emphasized the sanctity of human life. Sarah Jenkins was dead because Anna Miller pulled the trigger. The law demanded accountability. The sensational story reached its legal conclusion, but the human tragedy continued. The courtroom drama faded, replaced by the long, quiet fallout. Anna began her sentence in the state correctional facility for women. Reports from inside were scarce. Her lawyer stated she was adjusting, receiving counseling. The question of her gender identity within the prison system added another layer of complexity to her incarceration, largely uncommented upon by officials. David Miller effectively vanished. He sold the house on Elmwood Avenue, its value diminished by notoriety. He quit his job, changed his name legally, and moved to a different state seeking anonymity. The deal with the DA meant he faced no charges, but he was condemned in the court of public opinion and, seemingly, by his own conscience. The planned documentary aired, using court transcripts, news footage, interviews with neighbors, Harding, and the haunting silhouette interviews with David recorded before he disappeared. It presented the nuances the headlines missed: the financial desperation, Sarah's dual motivations, David's deep complicity, but ultimately left viewers with the unsettling ambiguity of the final struggle. Who truly caused the gun to fire remained, in the minds of some, an open question despite the verdict. Detective Harding, years later, reflected on the case. It was one of those jobs that sticks with you, he admitted in a follow-up interview, because there were no real winners. Just layers of tragedy built on one bad decision 20 years prior. David Miller thought he was choosing love, or maybe just avoiding conflict, but by choosing secrecy, he built a pressure cooker. Sarah's death. Maybe it wasn't inevitable, But the conditions were certainly ripe for something terrible to happen. The house on Elmwood eventually sold to a young couple unaware of its history, the overgrown flower beds and faded paint speaking only of neglect, not murder. The neighbors moved on, the whispers fading into memory. Sarah Jenkins was remembered by her school colleagues as a dedicated teacher, her tragic end a shocking disruption to a quiet life. Her family, already fractured by David's marriage, struggled to reconcile their grief with the complex, disturbing details that emerged. The story became a cautionary tale, twisted and retold online, sometimes used to fuel transphobia, other times cited as a tragic example of societal pressure and the destructive power of secrets. The dark irony was thick. David's desperate attempt to maintain normalcy through secrecy had resulted in the ultimate destruction of his life and the lives of those closest to him. His love, however genuine it might have been initially, had become indistinguishable from fear and control. Anna's desire to live authentically had become entangled with deception and, ultimately, violence. Sarah's justifiable concern for her brother had tipped into aggressive intrusion with fatal consequences. There was no simple moral, no clear hero or villain, just flawed human beings making devastating choices under immense pressure, some internal, some external. David's final recorded words in the documentary echoed long after the screen went dark. People ask if I regret staying, every day. But I also regret not being stronger, not facing the truth sooner. Maybe if I had, Sarah would still be here. Maybe Anna wouldn't be where she is. Maybe I wouldn't be this. The silhouette offered no comfort, no answers. Only the enduring shadow of a life irrevocably broken by a secret kept for 20 years. And the final, violent cost of its revelation. The silence that followed was heavier than any verdict.